exclusive to me, nor are values exclusive to the Jewish people. But they are Jewish values, and we're here talking as Jews. When we work around the world, we believe, I would use the adjective fiercely, that people ought to pursue their own visions of justice. And so we work with grassroots leaders. Obviously, we choose who we work with. But if somebody says the most important thing to us is figuring out a way for girls to be able to stay in school, or to defend LGBT rights in countries where people are put to death, or to allow smallholder farmers to hold on to their land, that's their agenda. And I would say that we do an extraordinary amount of social action around the world by helping people pursue their own visions of justice. And the other pieces of our work are with you, with the American Jewish community in all complexity, trying to educate people to the importance of that work. For me, trying to convince people, some of them don't need convincing, but some of them do, it's essentially Jewish work. Trying then to educate the American Jewish community, and a piece of the work that I still do proudly for AWS, trying to speak to rabbis about that work. And then trying to influence United States policymakers in that place called Washington. To think about the peoples of the world, the millions of people in the world who are suffering from various kinds of fierce oppressions, that we as the United States, and the Jewish people who are part of the United States, can convince them to do much more on behalf of people in need around the world if they respect people's right to make their own decisions, to form social movements, to work together against various forms of oppression. So we work vigorously now in Washington with rabbis and with leaders of the Jewish community and in the rest of the world. We're working in 19 countries and supporting some 460 grassroots groups, some of which are small, fantastic, and some of you have probably seen them, some of which are growing, are winning court cases, are joining social movements, and are trying to speak up for the people in the world who most need to advance it.
Thank you, Ruth. Leah, you serve effectively as the voice of the JCCs in Israel. As you so eloquently put it to me a few days ago, you bring JCCs to Israel and Israel to the JCCs. You have an initiative that I suspect that most people in the room have not heard of, which is this J response, which was started in the aftermath of Hurricane Harvey. And I wonder if you would tell us a little bit about what is this organization, how did it get started, and what is its mission?
So JCC Association's new signature initiative is called J Response, and this is basically our emergency response to JCCs. This all came about right after Houston got a severe hit. The JCC in Houston was severely hit after the hurricane. And what we did, JCC Association, what we did is what we know how to do immediately is do some fundraising. Look for some available funds to send to the Jewish community in Houston and to help them by that. And in January of last year, we decided to move our board meetings, our annual board meetings that usually take place at our headquarters in New York, to Houston. So our entire board, 50 people, traveled to Houston. We sat there for 2 days to do our regular board meetings. And then we asked our full board to stay for another day to volunteer in the community. And we went to one of the homes in one of the neighborhoods, and we physically repaired the house. I mean, it was unbelievable. For me, I can tell you, it was the best, most meaningful day on the job for me to take a hammer and some nails and to fix a house. And we saw the homeowner. She was there, and she couldn't thank us enough. And then we started having a conversation, and we asked ourselves, so what can we do best to help JCCs in needs? Fundraising, yes, that's important, and we do that. But what else can we do? And we had some meetings with the leadership of the Houston JCC, and they told us, you know what we really would have used is some hands. And then we realized that we have, that's not coming from me, right? Better?
Yeah, we're just trying to
It's not you. Yeah. I'll try to speak up. Anyway, we realized that we have this amazing resource of 6,000 employees throughout the country based at different JCCs, like the Oshman family JCC, and throughout North America and Canada as well. Why not utilize this unbelievable resource that at times of needs, we deploy our GCC staff professionals who are all in the business of community building, who are all trained to lend a hand in times of needs, who all come with this compassion to help the others. Why not deploy people to help GCCs in time of needs? So, as I mentioned, this is when Jorisch was born. And in Houston, we had what now we call partners. Back then, they were just a resource, not just. They were an amazing resource, Israel. And Yotam Politer, the co-CEO of Israel, was with us in Houston, shared the great work of Israel in Houston. I believe that they're still in Houston up to date, working and doing some amazing repairing there. And we started having conversations when I was back in Israel with Israel. How could we partner and we could establish a whole new organization together called Jorisch. Israel were so excited to partner with us. That's exactly the platform that they were looking for to expand their amazing work through the platform of GCCs that are serving 1.5 million people every week. This is our platform. And this is how Jorisch came about. Initially, we decided we're going to train GCC professionals, and the first training took place in Memphis. We had 20 GCCs there for 4 days with the amazing team of Israel. They sent in some professionals, and we did a very extensive, beautiful training. But then life happened. And 2 months ago, Pittsburgh, the shooting in Pittsburgh, changed the entire way that we saw Jorisch. One thing that we know is that we have to be flexible and we have to respond to what's happening and not to dream of what could happen. And we decided that it's not only responding to Mother Nature disaster, but also to human-made disasters. And in Pittsburgh, we saw one of the most severe, if not the most severe, attack against the Jewish community here in North America, but we also saw the Jewish community of North America come together. And actually, not only North America, but many Israelis also were there in Pittsburgh to help. And we decided to deploy our own GCC staff from all across the country to Pittsburgh to help the GCC staff in Pittsburgh. We need to remember that in Pittsburgh, the GCC was the headquarters for everything, for the FBI and for local law reinforcements, but also for Shiva, for mourning, for support for the victims and their families. And the GCC staff had all of the sudden to take so much more than they were able or ready to. And this is our way to return, to say we're here with you. And since that terrible weekend 2 months ago, through the end of the year, every week for 2 days, we're deploying GCC staff from all across the country to do whatever the GCC needs. This could be to sit in the front desk, to work with seniors, to work in the pool, anything that they need. I have the pleasure to be there. I will be there this coming Friday. I actually lived in Pittsburgh on the street of Tree of Life for a few years, so this would actually be coming back home for me. And this is our way to say JCC Association, through our JCCs, is here to help one another. And this is our way to do Tikkun Olam. This is our way to repair the world. And hopefully there won't be a lot of need for what we can do, but we definitely can do a lot.
Sabrina, you are a physician here locally at the Menlo Clinic and serve as a scholar at Stanford. And I was really intrigued by the fact that you only recently went on your first medical mission abroad to Kenya. I wonder if you could share with the folks in the audience, why did you decide to go? Was there a particular experience that moved you? And do you think you'll go on these missions in the future, and if so, why?
I'll take the last question first. Yes, I will go again if they'll have me. But I will follow Ruth Messenger's example and reintroduce myself. I'm a community pediatrician who was inspired by exceptional people like the people on this panel to join a movement, which was Israel. And so I am sitting here very humbly and thrilled to be here. But what I have to say really, I think, explains how sort of a typical individual in the world can be inspired by these movements to join their movement. So Kenya, medical school training in general is steeped in topics of social justice. So I think most doctors have some underlying desire to contribute to work like this. In my case, years ago, I had seen Israel's response to the Syrian refugees in Lesbos. And for me, the most impressive piece was to see volunteers clad in Israeli colors on the beach accepting the refugees off the boats. And I remember thinking to myself, I want to do something like that. And I filed it away. I have 3 young children. I thought I'd do it sometime in the future. And then, as luck would have it, I had contact with some of the leadership at IsraAid and was inspired again. And it was made clear to me that they had a need for pediatricians or pediatric specialists at this refugee camp in northwest Kenya. And by the end of the coffee, we had dates, and we had booked flights, and we were off. So what were we asked to do there? So essentially, we were asked to go and provide training to the healthcare providers that were providing pediatric care, as well as the psychosocial first aid support at the child safe space to provide first aid training for them. We did collaborative rounds with the medical professionals in the hospital. And the hospital is largely staffed by non-MDs, really, so allied healthcare professionals who have limited training but a ton of passion. These are mainly Kenyans. And so we went and did collaborative rounds with them, and then when there wasn't time for that, we would just provide direct patient care and tour the site so that we could figure out how to maximize our efforts with IsraAid there. So the impact for me of the trip, I think, was profound and formative in many different ways. I think on a personal level, I brought home many changes in my family life relating to living with, taking care of refugees who are undergoing an experience that I could only imagine. On a sort of cultural Jewish level, I think it was amazing to be working side by side with Israelis and see that the thing that united us was my interest in Tikkun Olam and dedication towards that, and also the Israeli culture of supporting that. And I think from a professional perspective, it became very clear that doctors don't decide who lives or dies, it's really circumstance. And so to share one story about that, we were doing outpatient clinic one day, and the way the scheduling works is people bring their medical records and they put a stone on top of it and then they line them up, and that's how they decide who goes first. So we're seeing the patients as quickly as we can, and a gentleman comes in, he's a community health worker, and he has a baby in his arms, or he looks like a baby to me, and he bucks this schedule and comes right to the front of the line. He says, I've been trying to get help for this child forever. Please come and help this child. So I sat down with him and I looked at this child's growth curves, and this was a 2-year-old child who looked like a 6-month-old child. And immediately I knew there was something wrong. And I came to understand from this very dedicated community health worker that this child had not been feeding properly for the 2 years in his existence. And the only recourse in that environment, given the resources that were available, was to admit him for nutrition and then discharge him. As a pediatrician, we think systemically, why is this child not feeding properly? It turns out this child has a congenital heart disease that in this country would be fixed, would be identified prenatally and fixed within the first year of life, and the child would live a normal lifespan. In that setting, it's a death sentence. And what I came to realize is that in the ICU setting in this refugee camp, the majority of the patients on that ward are those children. These children with conditions that in any other part of the world would be fixed, those children would survive. And so I went to the IsraAid staff and I said, we need to get these children to America, get them some surgeons. And here's where I was so completely humbled. The country director with IsraAid, who was so fabulous, or more, was very earnest in his desire to help us think sustainably, and instead we came up with some very, I think, effective action items that came out of it, such as developing a professional network of specialists that can go to missions in these places, and then even though that is something that requires a lot of time and money, that professional network then could be used to provide virtual consults to these medical professionals in the hospital. They have a difficult case, they can call, get help managing them. And then finally, connecting them with other NGOs that could solve this problem. So for instance, in Israel, there is a nonprofit called Save a Child's Heart that does exactly this, rescues these children from wherever their environment is, and houses them and their families and provides all the months of surgery and care to save their lives. So that for me, I think, was the most profound experience. I think I'll leave it there.
I can't help but jump in and think about the fact that in Judaism for the last 3,000 years we've been really repeating cure the sick, help the needy, and then help the needy, cure the sick, and feed the hungry. And that particular story, when it comes to the heart, really does manifest itself in this great idea of how do we cure the sick. And as you listen to these panelists, these are the things that the Jewish people have been repeating day in and day out for the last at least 1,500 years. The Mishnah, no less than 10 times, calls upon us to repair the world. The prophet Isaiah doesn't call upon us necessarily for us to be a light to the nations, but bring more light to the nations. And if you look at the work that Ruth, Sabrina, and Leah and Leah are doing, this is all about bringing more light to the world, and how appropriate it is to have this conversation specifically on Hanukkah, with the whole really this holiday is to bring more light to the world. Nir, you're the founder of Bina's social action program, and I was struck by the fact that you have a slightly different model. You aren't just going to far-flung places around the world and engaging in Tikkun Olam social action, but rather you've taken the model of the neighborhood. And I hope you'll share with us, first of all, what is this neighborhood program? What is your vision of Tikkun Olam, and where would you like to take your programs?
Okay, so hello everyone, thank you for inviting me. And thank you for including this issue of Tikkun Olam as part of the Zionist conversation. It's not very obvious. Remember when we first started the international program in B9 in Israel, so we called it Tikkun Olam. And the Israelis in the program asked us, how do you say Tikkun Olam in Hebrew? Not very common. Maybe I will get back to that later, but we start with our program. We have the network of secular yeshivas in Israel, and we're trying maybe to start one here. Part of, I know that when you say secular, it's not a good translation for the word chiloni in Hebrew. Because the secular Jew, the chiloni in Hebrew, is something that's very common. There are many, the biggest group in Israel of Jews are chiloni, or secular Jews. But what we didn't have till we started, and other partners of us, to think ourselves as Jews in a positive way. And I mean positive way, it says not who are we not. We are not Orthodox, we are not eating kosher, we are not keeping Shabbat according to Halacha, but who we are as the biggest Jewish group in Israel. Who are we? And we started the first secular yeshiva. When we started the first secular yeshiva in Tel Aviv, we started it in South Tel Aviv, near the central bus station. And I don't know how many of you have ever been there. I guess some of you. And when you walk on the streets of the Neve Sha'anan neighborhood near the central bus station, you meet refugees from all over the world. You meet very poor people. You meet drug addicts, homeless people. And this is the neighborhood we started the secular yeshiva. And think about the students going to study his Talmud, going to study his Torah, but when you have to walk into the Beit Midrash, when you have to walk into the yeshiva, he has to move the homeless aside. You have to be careful not to injure himself on something on the floor, because everything is broken and there are drugs on the floor, and condoms from the knife, or the women industry going on there, women traffic industry going on in this neighborhood. And then you get into the Beit Midrash and you start study those beautiful values we just said, about giving to the other, opening your heart, taking care of the orphan and the widow. But you look outside and say, what's going on here? This is the Jewish state. It doesn't work. The Midrash, the Talmud, and the reality doesn't work. And as I said, you say in Hebrew chiloni, for secular, we often call ourselves Yehudim Chaloni, not Chiloni. For the Hebrew speakers, for the non-Hebrew speakers, it means we are window Jews. Chalon is a window, and Chilun is secularism. Being a window Jew, it means your Bet Midrash, your yeshiva, is not closed, it's open, there is a window. You look on the Jewish text, you start off looking at yourself, you start to look at it as a mirror. It's something it's showing you something in yourself. Like no one said that there are 70 different aspects of faces to the Torah. This is because different people look at it. It's do something for you as a mirror. Reflects something in you. But much important than that for us, it's a window. You look for this text, but you look outside. And you say, okay, I have something to do with it. I see you there outside. I want to do something for you. I want to do something together. And then we started to understand what is our positive answer to what kind of Jew are we. One of the answers, it's not the only one, but one of the answers, we are social activists. We want to repair the world. We want to do something. This is part of our Judaism. And it's not that Israelis are not doing volunteer work. Israel is doing Shitchi, they are going to volunteer in different projects around the world, they are doing things. But they don't, the secular Israel doesn't see it as part of their Jewish Jews, those rabbis in the synagogue, those are we are doing something else. Volunteer, the activists. And we want to take this, the things that here in America is part of your daily life, to take those values of social justice from the Jewish book and say, this is our Judaism. And the last thing that I will say about it, we started a Bet Bina in India, because we saw 30,000 Israeli travelers after the armies have been going through India a year. 30,000, the young Israelis, the ages between 20 and 30. There are 8 million Israelis, 30,000 going through India a year. Think about it. And once when I was traveling there, I walked into the Chabad house in India. And I went there to a Shabbat service, and I couldn't hear anything from the rabbi about what's going on outside. And I thought about it. 30,000 Israelis walk through this place a year, and with nothing to say, or nothing to do about the community we use as tourists to enjoy ourselves. So we started this Bet Bina in the Ramsar, of India, when Israelis are coming, do their Shabbat service, do their holidays, study, and they going out with the local community, with local leaders in the local community, and together doing the work for the community. And this is an opportunity for us to say to those Israelis, this is your Judaism. Being a good Jew doesn't mean you need to put a feeling over people like many Israelis think. No. Going to volunteer in this village in India, this is part of your Judaism. And I think that one of the differences between the project to our project that in Israel, many of the low-income areas, low-income neighborhoods are also Jewish neighborhoods. So the Jews are also the recipients and the activists and the receivers. And that gave us a great opportunity to open those projects in those neighborhoods. And now the activists in the neighborhoods, they are studying Torah because they are Jews, they want to study. And they go as activists themselves to do things on their own community. And this is a local-based community of Limud HaMeviled El Maaseh, study, bringing into action.
Thank you, Nir. So now I'll open it up to just a few questions of myself as the prerogative as the chair, and then we'll open it up to Q&A. So to each of you, can Tikkun Olam really serve as a bridge between the community here in the United States and Israel, and frankly for world Jewry? And how does that, what does that look like? Can Tikkun Olam serve as the platform that unites us here in this country, Jews around the world, and the state of Israel? Who wants to take that first?
I certainly think that it's not only possible, but it's something that we at GCC Association, this is something that we're doing. You know, Sabrina, you mentioned Save a Child's Heart. I know many of you heard about Save a Child's Heart. It's based in Holon's Wolfson Hospital. It's one of the most amazing kept secrets in Israel. Literally on a volunteer basis, Israeli doctors are repairing hearts of young children from all over the world, Africa and Asia, bringing them to Israel or sending, and the Arab world Palestinians, absolutely, thank you.
We've had Iraq, Iran, you've had children from all over the Arab world countries that have relationships with Israel and countries that do not have relationships with Israel and that are officially at war with Israel.
Correct, including our own Palestinians that live next door and are welcome to that program. When we have groups visiting Israel from our JCCs, we take them to see Save a Child's Heart, and they're blown away. And they're saying, wow, we didn't know that Israel does all that. You know, what we hear on the news is Israel is the aggressor and took over this place and took over that place. And we only hear those kind of stories, but we didn't hear the stories of Israel. We never heard the stories of Peoplehood and many, many other programs. And I think that the best way to connect between people is by kindness. And the best and most efficient way to connect between Jews from all over the world is through kindness. I believe that if Jews from all over the world will be like Sabrina, will join initiatives like Israel's initiatives and other initiatives and travel to the world together, Israelis and non-Israelis, all share the same Jewish values and do Tikkun Olam, they will not only repair the world, but they will repair themselves first and foremost. They will come back home and say, I met a new friend now, Sabrina, she's from Palo Alto and she's an amazing Jew and we share the same values. And I've been out to Africa and I met Johnny from Salt Lake City and we repaired the world together and we share the same values. And I believe that this is the best way to overcome the gaps, to bridge those gaps, and again, not only to repair the world, but our own break. So I solely agree.
Well, I was going to say I thoroughly agree as well. I think I'm a good example of that, but one of the statements you made, Nira, about Jews in Israel feeling that to be Jewish you have to be religious, I think the same problem is here in the United States, where Jews are not affiliating because maybe the religious part of it doesn't resonate for them, but the values are universal. And so it's my experience that the more we can make that connection between the values in Israel and the values with American Jews, the closer that relationship becomes.
So I agree. And I think if Gil Troy said earlier on this panel that people vote economic and security, and I have to disagree. People vote identity. Here in Israel, everywhere in the world, people vote according to their identity, not according to something more like economic or security. And one of the things for us, I think, as an Israelis, that we can err from this connection is to study from the American Jewish community, and you are being inspiration for us, that part of being Jewish in Israel is a positive thing. When Netanyahu said to one of the rabbis in Israel, whispered, but in a way that everyone will hear, that the leftists forgot what does it mean to be Jewish, he knew what he did, because he knew that people will vote according to what they will feel belong. And people, Jews, they will vote for Jews, for Jewish ideas. And if we will be able to implement to our, the way we think in Israel about Judaism, those values of Tikkun Olam, this will help us to say, when you vote human rights, you vote Judaism. When you vote social justice, you vote Judaism. And this is something in the Israeli Jewish language that we can learn from you. The other thing I said earlier about this program, Tikkun Olam, when we started this Masa program, this is a Masa program for Israelis, for Jews from the United States come to Israel. And many people from the different organizers of those programs, they criticize us. Because they said, what are you doing? You're bringing people to Israel. We want them to love Israel. And you take them to volunteer with refugees in Arab neighborhoods to see all the bad sides of Israel. What do you do? After 10 years, they made a research and they saw our alumni are most connected to their Jewish communities. Some of them made Aliyah, and they feel positive feelings about Israel. And when I saw this research, I thought about Tibia's wife, you know, from Fiddler on the Roof. So when Tibia's daughter married the poor tailor and not the rich butcher, so Tibia was asked her why. And she answers, because I love him. And then he go back to his wife, and he asks, do you love me? And then she answers, what kind of question are you? This is it. I'm living with you for 30 years. I raised your kids. I washed your clothes. If this is not love, what is love? This is love. And I think when people dirk their hands together, doing a hard work, this is a real love. To see the beautiful sights of Israel, it's like first meeting on the bar. This is not love. Living together through the hard things of life, this is love.
Yeah,
and that's,
I got news for you. I'm still asking my wife if she still loves me. And 3 children.
so I guess if you are together, she does, right?
Not sure.
Okay.
Thank you. That was great. So first of all, I want to just do a special shout out for the work of Bina. I think it's extraordinary, and I love the way Nir tells the story, but I'm going to come back in a minute to the piece of work they're doing around the bus station, so I just want to say that first. Second of all, I'm glad actually I went last because I agree with the things that were said, and I want people to hold some contradictory ideas in their hands. So yes, Tikkun Olam, doing this work, some of us think it's better than praying, anyway it's different than praying, anyway it certainly informs who we are, and it can make us feel very connected to Judaism in a good way. At the same time, we have to be really clear the way the question is worded and a couple of the other questions here. Tikkun Olam is not for us to build peoplehood. Healing the world means healing the world. And so whatever service programs we set up, whatever projects we do, whether we do them and advertise the fact that they're happening all over Israel, Save a Child's Heart, there's some other projects, there's a fantastic guy in Ethiopia who treats children. I mean, there are lots of really great projects. It's good to know all of those. It's good for all of us to be talking about this as Jewish work. It's good for the work that your community here does, or the community center does, or your congregation does, with Jews and with non-Jews. Let me take a side note and point out that every federation in the United States provides vast services to non-Jews in their cities, and we should be prouder of that and sing it from the rooftops, and we don't. So all of that is really good work, and yes, it is very good because it does help people think, oh, there's all these things to Judaism, and I can feel better about being a Jew, and this is the kind of Jew I want to be. I tell people, when people say to me, what denomination are you? I say social justice. So all of that is true, but I want us to try to hold a couple of contradictory ideas, and one of them is the work has to be primarily for the world that needs healing. You need healing. Larissa Siegel, she's the development officer for AJWS in San Francisco, so I'm picking her. You need healing, go to your shrink. You see some project that you want to work on, fantastic, yes, it will make you feel better, but it's for and with and of the people that you're helping. The second thing I want to point out, which is related to that, is a lot of the projects we're talking about, and they are phenomenal projects, I don't want to question that for a minute, but they focus in on the kindness. Hasidim. And what American Jewish World Service tries to do is focus in on the issue of human rights and justice. And as an example, since this is the one thing I knew coming to this conference that I can talk about equally on both sides without being questioned, the country that I live in and of which I'm a citizen and on which I'm standing now, and Nir's country, both, even if they weren't Jewish, should be embarrassed about their handling of refugees, and that we are Jewish. Okay? And what Israel is not doing with 33,000 Eritrean and Sudanese refugees on the big issue and the big picture, and it doesn't mean that they're not getting better fed, and it doesn't mean that there's not somebody looking for housing, but these are, in Israel right now, that is a policy issue. And how do I get to speak about that, about Israel? Because I live in a country that is taking children away from its parents at the borders. And the only question I have in my mind is why is not every Jew in America in Texas or California right now, including me? We should be doing nothing else. We should be bearing witness. This is not, I heard speak just my last point, Sally Yates, who is the woman, the Assistant Attorney General of the United States, who decided over one weekend not to enforce the travel ban. And she said that the biggest factor in her making that decision that Sunday, she was in Washington, there was a demonstration against the travel ban 2 blocks away. She could only hear the noise. She wasn't sure what the demonstration was about. She asked her security guard, who she said, in speaking to us, is like an uptight, right-wing, whatever. And she said to him, like, what's that demonstration? And he said, it's against the travel ban. that's good, because this is not who we are. And so I want to say about both of our countries, everyone in this room knows your own immigrant history, coming to Israel, coming to the United States. There are only probably very few seventh-generation Palestinians here. There are no Native Americans here that I know. So we all are immigrants. We all got to where we are in some way or other, and the fact that we are allowing immigrants and refugees to be abused, and that we are not engaging our Jewish community not only in providing services to those people, but in addressing those policy issues in our countries is a shame.
So not everyone on this panel agrees, and so I'm going to raise a few questions that I think not all of us see eye to eye on. What's that? Let's talk about establishing potentially a global service corps, a Shalom Corps. This has been something that has been raised often in the Israeli government, this idea of something synonymous with the Peace Corps here in the United States. I wonder, I'd welcome your thoughts collectively and individually on should we establish a global Shalom Corps, and if so, what does that look like? And let's start with Ruth.
Also, I want to say, I think actually for me the answer to that is very clear. So again, could there be a broader entity, could, in theory, there be a broader entity that says to Israeli Jews, American Jews, other diaspora Jews, this is something we can come and do together? You know, of course there should be. As he said, Massa brings American Jews to Israel. We do things to bring our peoples together, but you're talking, and the request for that Shalom Corps is a super large entity. And I'm going to add the word to that, bureaucratic and governmental. And I want to make the point that when I hear this talked about, and it's been people have been bringing versions of this to me since the day I started at AJWS 20 years ago, and they seem to not be able in their minds to think about how do you combine a good or several good not-for-profit civil society efforts, Bina, Mossad, American Jewish World Service, with a government. Israel is a government. The United States is a government. The Peace Corps is something to be very proud of in the history of the United States. It was never nearly as big as anyone thinks. That's a good thing in marketing. I can't remember the number right now, but I was astounded when I heard how few. But that's not the point. It worked at the behest of the American government. It doesn't mean it didn't do good work, but it does mean it was an agent of our geopolitical efforts. And if those of you who've been in anyone here was in the Peace Corps, people were pulled out of countries from time to time because the U.S. decided it didn't like those countries anymore. And with all due respect, the U.S. would do the same thing now, and so would Israel. So I think we have to just be careful when we think about, like, again, who is this for? Is it for the people who are receiving the help of the Shalom Corps? Is it for the government that set it up to do good relations and good marketing in the world? Okay, Israel does some very good things in the world. Israel brought hydropower and hydroponic techniques around the world. The U.S. has, I mean, you've written a lot about this, other things besides that, technology. But I just think all I want to say about that is the idea of working together, that's a powerful idea. The question of what an entity would look like and what the difference is between a government and a civil society organization, I think means that we can't sort of launch this as a world effort.
Anyone else have thoughts?
Were you specifying that this is going to be a governmental organization? I didn't hear that.
I wasn't specifying. I was opening it up to what does that look like? Should we have one, and does it look, what does it look like? Anyone else have thoughts?
I just want to add to what Ruth said. I agree with you that being part of the government has its downsides, but I think it's a statement. And I think that if we initiate something like that, it's bigger than what it is. It's a statement that the Israeli government, together with many different Jewish organizations worldwide, are believing in these Jewish values and are willing to invest in that. So yes, I would rather it be grassroots, and there are many grassroots programs that are already happening, but I am looking for this statement out of the Israeli government.
You know, interestingly, the Prime Minister recently was asked at the next natural disaster, would he consider sending a few reporters, a few photographers in order to take pictures? And whether you love the Prime Minister or hate the Prime Minister of Israel, he gave, I think, a quintessentially Jewish answer, and he said as follows. He looked at the reporter and he said, "What, are you kidding me? If I have to choose between sending in a few reporters and photographers and sending in a few more doctors, I'm going to choose the doctors any day of the week. We're about saving lives. We're not about taking happy snaps." And so as we think about this idea of a global service corps, I totally agree that, me personally, I think it should be connected to the Israeli government as a statement of, these are the values that we stand for: saving lives, curing the sick, helping the needy.
I would say I agree with that. I think from I think the value of that is probably present on many levels. I think on one level, the connection between American and Israelis, or the Jewish diaspora in general, I think this is a way that everyone can connect. And to Ruth's point, we all need to be doing as much as we can, I think, in as Jews in social justice. But what makes the world go around is that everybody has their role to play in life. And so what if all of us have 10% of our money, 10% of our time, whatever the number is, but if all of us can contribute in some way to this core so that there is Jewish unity and that there's this connection. And I think furthermore, the idea of collaboration. So I was reading an article recently, I've forgotten which city it was, but several of the Jewish organizations in that city merged in order to be able to leverage their resources and their knowledge and collaborate. And I think from that perspective, even if it's not a governmental organization, but it is some organization where all of these NGOs collaborate together to be able to leverage their own resources, it creates a better outcome for everyone.
I don't know why my associations today are going to Yiddish authors. So I mentioned Shalom Aleichem earlier, so now I will say something about Bashevi Singer. So there is a famous book, Shadows on the Hudson. I guess many of you read. And one of the characters asked David Green, he asked him, not David Ben-Gurion, David Green is one of the characters, and he asked him, how come Jews survived this, he wrote it in 1948, by the way. How come Jews survived all those wars and all those cruel things happened in the last 100 years? And he said they had faith in God, this is one thing. And the other thing, they are in diaspora, they didn't have their own state. If you will take one of those things for them, if you take faith, they will assimilate it. And if you will give them a state, they will become more cruel than all the other goyim that we know. That's in 1948. And we are now in 2018. We have a state, and the majority of the Jews living today in the world, I don't think they are religious. So the two things that Bashevi Singer said happened. And if we will be able to take our new faith into Tikkun Olam, and to take our new state to Tikkun Olam, so that will be the best answer for Bashevi Singer. And this is a good reason to do a Peace Corps.
So I'll ask my final question, and then I'll open it up to Q&A, and we'll do this in rapid-fire fashion. Can you name three things that, each of you, can you name three things that everyone in this crowd can do tomorrow, or walking out of here today, to literally engage in Tikkun Olam to make the world a better place?
The simple thing, I think we all live in abundance, and I think if all of us think about what things we have in abundance, whether it's knowledge, money, time, anything, and just share those things, I think that makes a big statement.
So the first thing you can do, because today is Sunday, it's the last night of Hanukkah, is put away the presents that you have for your children and your grandchildren. They'll wait till next year, and tell them that collectively you're going to give to the needs of poor people in their own countries. And if I were you, I would talk about refugees and tell them their refugee, their family refugee or immigrant story. And in each of our countries, there are people who are there because they are seeking freedom, because they are trying to follow a given world legal policy of being able to apply for asylum, which is not being adequately acted on in either of those countries. You don't need to tell all of that to your kids. Just suggest that for Hanukkah tonight, they should be giving instead of getting, because there are people in need in their own country. So that would be the first thing. And the second thing, which I've tried to talk about, is while you give and while you think about, and I love what you said, some of your own time to volunteering as well as some of your own money, to think also about some of the justice issues. So an issue that is in neither of our countries but that affects us as Jews is there is an ongoing genocide in Burma with the Rohingya. And no country in the world has yet sufficiently stepped up to try to stop that genocide by imposing sanctions on the government of Burma, and each of our countries could do a better job of policy in that area.
I will take it more locally, and I don't well familiar with locally here, but I guess it's true everywhere. Sometimes you don't have to go all the way to Burma to see the other. And I guess when you go over the bridge in San Antonio, go to East Palo Alto, you can find people in need. And I think one of the things that I see as always as something that go in front of me, that Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in the Talmud, when he goes out of the cave, so the first thing he see people working the fields, and he want to burn them. Because he just studied Torah in the cave, he feels very, you're going out of this conference, you're very inspired, and you want this. And then you see, just people walking and do their daily life, and you want to burn them, because why do you live this? And sometimes to look on your neighbor, to look what happened in your next door under the bridge or east to the bridge is something to do, and to ask the people, what do you need? Sometimes we don't know what do you need. What do you need? Is there something that, this is the first thing that Bar Yochai asked after he studied this lesson. Hayesh davar tzarich tikkun. I don't know what I need to repair. I need to ask you, what help do you need me to help you repair? And the last thing I want to say about Hanukkah, earlier they said something about this dispute between Hillel and Shammai how to light a candle. So Shammai says you light 8 candles and then you go down. Hillel, as we do here, do now, you light the first, the second, the third, the fourth. And I like the Hillel system. Because when you come to a low-income area, low-income neighborhood, and you want to light all the lights together and then vanish, it will not work. You have to put one light, and then another light, and then the third, and then the fourth, and the big light will come.
So that was beautiful. And I just want to add to that David Brooks said earlier that we need to remember that we have a soul. So I think that first thing, we just need to remember to use our souls because we were blessed with souls. We say, our sages said, it's not upon you to complete the task, but you're not at liberty to dismiss yourself from it. And this takes me back a few years ago when I was reading about the terrible massacres in Syria next door to us. As you mentioned, we need to look next door. I said, I have to do something. And I think it was when my first granddaughter was born, and I just felt that, I'm so blessed and I'm so fortunate, and I want to do something to help others. And I donated some money for food for Syrian babies. And my husband said, it's beautiful what you did, and I'm so proud of you, but I guarantee no baby in Syria will see this money. It will stay with the government, and they won't actually. And I felt very bad because I wanted to do something. So I think that we have the ability, even if we think it's a little thing, we have the ability to do something, and we can't just say because no one in Syria will actually get the money, we won't give the money. I think that we need to continue to believe in our ability to repair the world, even if it's step by step, and not to give up and not to say we're going to leave this to the big organizations or to the governments or to whomever to fix the world. It's upon us, even if it's a small step.
So I think it's time to open it up to Q&A. Steve, why don't you take it off?
Well, thanks all for your comments. I've heard many themes of why it's important to have this Tikkun Olam effort. Part of it is to reinforce our identities as Jews, to actually allow ourselves to express that identity. Another is, of course, is to actually have an impact on the people. But a third one that I haven't heard spoken to, and I want to ask you about, is to give Jews like me a Jewish portal through which to contribute to world issues. To me, it's so painful when I see Jews only helping Jews. It's great, but it's not enough. And it's also painful that I have to go and contribute to the larger world by going to secular institutions. We need more Jewish portals so I can express my Jewishness, I can build the Jewish brand, and I can feel good about having an impact out there, but expressing myself through that Jewish channel. And what can we do as a society to promote those channels? To me, HAWS was actually the only Jewish channel that I was aware of where I said, I can have a big impact on social issues out there through the Jewish portal. I think we need more. What do you think?
Yeah, all these
We
organizations
mentioned
are
all the
doing that.
organizations that we mentioned.
Yeah.
We mentioned Israel, they're working
Israel it is, but I
Save
don't
a
think
Child's
that's
Heart
available.
is-
Is that available to me? Is that-
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah.
We're right here.
I've been waiting for these kind of questions. But you mentioned Save a Child's Heart, Innovation Africa. I mean, there are many different organizations that are repairing the world, not the Jewish communities.
So then they need to be, so they weren't on my radar screen. They may not be on a lot of other people, so it's a matter of promoting those and making more access, more awareness. I think, Ruth, you're nodding your head. What do you see there?
I think a lot of it is information and awareness, and I think that's really, if you go back to Near's original discussion of like how they're educating inside Israel of the ways in which it means to be a Jew. I think in all of our communities, all of our JCCs, all of our synagogues should be talking about the work that Jews do in the world, the work that Jews do for Jews, and the work that Jews do for non-Jews. And it's something to be incredibly proud of, and it keeps up with the issues. I keep saying, so I'll say again, it can be done both in a direct service way, in a way that allows communities to lead and build for themselves, and it can be done through advocacy in the United States, okay? So that it's an American action to take, or an Israeli action to take to influence the policies of our government. But I think it's not that there aren't organizations, there are different kinds of organizations, it's more advertising what they do and how they're different from each other, and being sure that as Jews, we are always trying to evaluate what's the best way to deliver this help. So it can very often, and that's the good news, that's what you're asking about, be through a Jewish organization. But if you determine that the best way to make this difference in this Palo Alto is not to do this and that, but just to go down there and help, then do that, because you're doing it as a Jew. You're acting according to Jewish values, and if you know that, yes. But I do want to make the point I made before, and it's very strange for me to be, I'm not a fundraiser, I hear about fundraising is forever, I can do for service. But I want people to remember that all of it, I won't say every place, but all of the large city federations have a raft of social service organizations that help people in need in their cities. We should be so proud of that. We should be so proud that all over the country, Jewish Family Services, if you interview them, and I say interview because we don't publish this information. But in most large cities, more than half the population that the JFS serves is non-Jewish. Why? Sometimes they get embarrassed and they'll tell you, well, it's a better way to get federal money. That's not what we should be saying. What we should be saying is because we have great administrators and great social workers and great fundraising networks and very smart, good smarts about how to work in San Francisco or New York or Los Angeles. And people come to us because they know we provide good services. And we should be so proud of that as Jews instead of sort of keeping it a secret. And the way in which AJWS works in the world is only to do the work. But I promise you that every place we work, people see Jews as the people committed to social justice. And I can't imagine anything better than this.
Now let me take one more track. How many of you, by show of hands, have been to Israel in the last 3 years? So most of the people in this room have been to Israel, and I suspect that most of you, if you're going to Israel, going to the traditional places like the Kotel, Masada, Tel Aviv, etc., I challenge you, the next time you go to Israel, go to United Hatzalah's headquarters in Jerusalem. This is an organization that is saving lives. It's reduced the time it takes emergency responders to get to the scene of an emergency from 20 minutes down to anywhere in the country, on average, 3 minutes and 90 seconds in major cities. Next time you're in Israel, go to the Weizmann Institute and see where the 2 top drugs were created, Rebif and Copaxone, that treat over half of those treated with those afflicted with multiple sclerosis. Go to Nazareth next time you go to Israel and see how an Israeli Arab Christian couple created a GPS for the brain. The GPS that essentially allows to treat for Parkinson's and is used in thousands of hospitals all over the world. I tend to think from an information perspective, you have Israeli technology today that is literally improving the lives of billions of people, and many of them are for-profits, but some of them are not. Like there are some, like United are nonprofits, and would be delighted for you to start an organization like that right here in San Francisco and Palo Alto to reduce the time that it does take to get to an emergency, to reduce the time it takes to get to a medical emergency. And so I encourage you, that is another story most people are not aware of that's happening in the state of Israel. Yes, back there.
Yeah, so I just want to say it's 2018, and I'd ask everybody here, we don't have to sit around and wait to see an ad if you're studying synagogue. It's really easy to go on Google and find every single organization that due diligence on, to see for yourself what you can do and who you can get involved in. Jewish organizations that do things for the world, people in the world that are non-Jewish as well as Jewish. There's no excuse anymore for everybody here not to step up and do it. That's what I would ask everybody to do here, is make that commitment, to take the time, and go online, and figure it out, and get involved.
So I'll dovetail on that, and I would say to each of you, I would look to the person to your left and look to the person to your right and realize that the only people that are going to move down on the issues that we collectively care about are you. I mean, truly, the question that I hope each and every one of you is going to ask yourselves coming out of this panel today is, what can I do to make the world better? What small or large gesture can I do to make the world better? Look at someone like Leah, who started this social action program in Tel Aviv and in Beersheba and other parts of the country. This is one individual that's touching the lives of so many around the world, or AJWS, or the JCCs, or one person who's a doctor who decided to go on a mission to Kenya to touch other people's lives. Now, I don't know that most of you are doctors or most of you are executives at the JCCs, but each and every one of us has the obligation to ask ourselves, what small or large gesture can I do to bring more light to the world?
Can I just make one other comment on a very local level? So my impression of Jewish charities in general is that the majority support everyone, not just Jewish causes. I could be wrong about that, but in all my interactions, that's always been the case. But even a tiny example here at the JCC, they had on Martin Luther King Day, they had a mitzvah day. Families could sign up and do community service somewhere in the community. It was so oversubscribed that now they do it monthly. And anybody in the community, Jewish, not Jewish, Muslim, whoever you are, can come, show up, and participate in some previously organized mitzvah activity. And to me, that is so Jewish, that we are here to serve our community and heal our community. And it has really nothing to do with serving Jews.
I mean, to that point, I can't imagine, again, I ask this quietly, but I ask this quietly and humbly, where else would we see a gathering like this of individuals? You'd certainly not see this in China asking, what can we do to make the world a better place? Would you see this in the Congo? Would you see this in, what's that? I'm saying, maybe yes, but I don't know, I've been to China X number of times, and I've been to India X number of times, and I've been to other parts of the world. I generally see this as a pretty special phenomenon to the Jewish people.
Well, I disagree. The reason for 402 was Americans who went to those communities and started organizations that we felt we were supporting. But the rest of them were supported by indigenous local people who stepped forward and said, what is a way in which we create greater justice in the community? What is a way that we can fight the government to hang on to our land? What do we do about the LGBTQI in a country that puts people to death? And those organizations are being run by those people. And tomorrow is Human Rights Day. Yesterday was Human Rights Shabbat. But today is Human Rights Defenders Day. And we know of 300 people a year who get murdered for leading fights for human rights in their own country.
Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day.